to the second day of the developer sessions at the Eurogamer Expo. We've got a super special session lined up next. He's one of the men who's responsible for making PlayStation so awesome and making the Vita and PlayStation 4 so incredibly cool. So I'm sure he's going to have some interesting stuff to share with you. Can you please give up for Shahid Ahmad?
Wow, applause before I start. Thank you. Anyone here expecting AAA? There's a AAA session that's going on? No? That's good, because they're getting a bit tired about that sort of stuff getting replaced by indies, which is what this is about. I'm going to start with an absolutely ridiculous quote. Anyone heard of Steven Pressfield? No? I recommend him. How many of you here are indies, by the way? How many of you would you say are gamers? Fantastic. There are a few people without hands up. And any journalists, any press? Fantastic. Okay, I can't swear then. So Steven Pressfield wrote a book called The War of Art. And if you're into video games development or any other creative endeavor, I recommend you get it, read it, and read it, and read it again. And Pressfield says the highest treason a crab can commit is to make a leap for the rim of the bucket. Anyone brave enough to explain what that means? James. Okay, I'll try and give my understanding of this. As I said at Gamescom, being indie is about being free to do exactly what you want to do. And very few people have the guts to make this decision. It's not an easy choice, especially if you're doing it full time. And very often, there is a feeling that the individual who makes this decision to go indie, to go after their dreams, there's a feeling that the rest of the group don't like that very much, you know? So be prepared to put up with a little of that if you're an indie. Now, I'm a pretty old guy to be in video games, so what I want to know is it okay to use words like megaton? Can I say megaton? Yeah? Anyone heard of the Mighty Nine? Yeah? Well, the Mighty Nine Kickstarter campaign is set to announce a Vita version as a stretch goal sometime later today. And we've been very supportive of that. Watch this space. Can we call that a megaton? Megaton-ish? Let's talk about the self-publishing revolution. This is what has made independent video games possible. Amanda Hocking, who some of you I'm sure have heard of, tried to get published. Sadly didn't succeed, but eventually did through the self-publishing route, and made a ton of money. Anyone seen this guy, Alex Day? No? You're clearly all over 30. Anyone under 30 here? Yay, young people. So this guy's very young as well. I think he's 23. And his claim to fame is that he has eschewed the mainstream music industry, and he's made a success of himself just on YouTube. He's had offers. He's turned them down. So you call YouTube almost a self-publishing for musicians. That's what it's about, right? So who needs publishing? Is it over? Is it finished? Who thinks publishing is finished? Not many brave people. Okay, one person thinks publishing is finished. Brave person. Look outside. How many games have publishers? This game, a published game, made $1 billion in 3 days. $1 billion. I'll say it again, $1 billion. That's a lot of money. Now, is there an indie game out there that's made $1 billion yet? Can you think of one? You think it's made $1 billion yet? There'll be more of those. The point is, something like this, and there are many, many other examples of billion-dollar franchises now in video games, support a lot of people, support a very large industry. It's an incredible machine. I don't think publishing is going away anytime soon. But it is turning into something different. We've seen huge contraction in the AA space. I mentioned this recently, and very, very sadly, Blitz, who you might have heard of, also gave us some bad news. Some good friends over there. That whole space, the AA space, is contracting massively. What's it going to be replaced by? Well, hopefully the likes of FutureLab over there and others, larger conglomerates of independent developers, or independent developers who enjoy some success and build on that. The likes of Chucklefish, who are more distributed in many ways than some of the largest companies in the world. They're working on Starbound, of course. What's happening in the AAA space, the likes of GTA 5, is that those opportunities are few and far between, becoming more and more expensive, becoming more narrow, and very, very hard to get into. Working very hard to ensure that a successful franchise is monetized. Horrible word, I'm sorry, but I'm allowed to use it. I'm in biz dev. Monetized really, really successfully. AAA is very dependent on leading-edge technology, and it's very risk-averse. So who's funding the other developers? It's difficult. It's a very, very difficult space. The independent development space is expanding very, very quickly. There are lots of factors that have led to that expansion, and I won't bore you with those details. But there does need to be some movement in the AA publishing space. And of course, we have the likes of Kickstarter, which I talked about earlier, Indiegogo. There's alpha funding for some of the more established studios, and there'll probably be other forms of funding available as well. And of course, there is also platform funding too. But publishing, as you can see, is no joke. This is what's involved. It's insane. And if you have a look at the tallest list there, it's in marketing. Marketing is really, really important. Who knew? And the most important element of marketing is what? Anyone want to take a stab at this? Come on, brave souls. There's one item there, and I've made it easy for you. Yes, word of mouth. Word of mouth is the biggest advantage that independent developers enjoy, because you are the ones who are passionate about what you do. You are the ones who get your game. You are the ones best equipped to explain your game to other people. When Alan talks to me about his game, I believe it. I really believe it. I'm really moved to hear about his plans and his goals. Later on, I'll give you a few examples of how PlayStation has been working with the independent development community and what it means to some of those people. But let's have a look. This is what this is what people are saying still needs to be done. There's a lot of work. Can you do this all? Can indies do this all? My point here being that publishing is not going to go away, but that there needs to be a mechanism by which the best product can be brought to market. That's still being worked out, I think. Let's tackle some myths, shall we? Indie games have no depth. And the reason I'm doing this, how many of you like indie games, by the way? Oh, shit, I'm stuffed. Okay, I was hoping to be talking to AAA audience. Oh, I saw PR are going to kill me. So indie games have no depth. Well, let's test that. IGN, Andrew Goldfarb says, Hotline Miami may seem simple on the surface, but beneath its bloody deaths and old-school art style, it hides a brilliantly layered story that's actually deeper than many AAA experiences. I found this to be true. I played Lone Survivor the other night for about half an hour. I had to stop playing because I was crapping myself. It was genuinely frightening. I had the headphones on, I was sitting in the dark, I turned off the notifications as Jasper suggested, and I was terrified, genuinely terrified. It started to play tricks on my mind. Anyone else found that? And yes, of course, it's best on Vita. I was playing on the Vita, just in case there are any doubts about that. When I played Velocity for the first time as a mini, the depth in that was just ludicrous. Well, how do they do this? They actually get it. They've layered the mechanics properly. They've put some thought into this. I want to replay. I'll be playing this forever. I'm a dad. I've got no time. So I had to stop. But the good news is we carried on working together and have done more cool stuff. Anyone can make indie games, right? They're easy. Yeah? Anyone can make indie games. Why should I buy an indie game? My friend Stephen Pressfield says, the danger is greatest when the finish line is in sight. At this point, resistance, and I'll talk about resistance in a minute, knows we're about to beat it. It hits the panic button. It marshals one last assault and slams us with everything it's got. This is what you feel as an independent developer, as an artist, in any endeavor when you're trying to refine something to perfection. To me, it almost sounds like childbirth. And not that I've experienced childbirth directly, but it's an intense experience, and you have to fight through it. You have to keep fighting and fighting and fighting, and that's hard. You know, when you're working in a traditional, larger developer, there are days you can hide. You can't hide when you're an indie. There's nowhere to hide. It's just you. The buck stops with you. And this intensity comes through. And when people play games made by the best indies, they feel that connection. And then they can engage with the creator on Twitter and on other social media. It's amazing. Sometimes you can engage with the author and say, I want that on PlayStation. And it happens. That's what's different. But the point here is that resistance, this is a concept that Stephen Pressfield talks about, is what stops you from finishing and perfecting your art. And he says that making art is our most noble calling as human beings. I have to agree. One of my favorite people in the business, everyone know Robert Fearon? This is a great, great piece of analysis of that feeling. Finishing the video game without topping yourself, hardest. It is really hard to finish a game. There are a lot of people who are finding it easier and easier to get into the creation of video games, and that's fantastic. No one's happier than me. I mean, I've started 1,000 games and haven't finished one in God knows how long. But it's really, really hard to finish. And he knows this. We've got lots of tools. But, you know, people were writing books when they were typewriters. Just having a fantastic word processor doesn't make you a great author. I wish it did, because I've got loads of word processors. I've got loads of those distraction-free writing apps. I keep switching between distraction-free, yeah, okay. Which one shall I use? Which one shall I use? Doesn't make me a better writer. Sequences completely changed the way music is made. Anyone here make music? James, why is your hand not up? Making music is fantastic nowadays. If you've got any ability at all, any ability, you can make good music. And if you've got no ability, you can make music. You won't make good music, but you can still make music. So you can get started. But to create a finished piece of art, very, very difficult. There are no guarantees just because you have access to these tools. A Sanatan here will testify. Just because you've got good tools doesn't mean you can. Assault Android Cactus is a beautiful, beautiful homage to twin-stick shooters. I've played that and found that he really gets it. Sanatan really gets it. It's not easy to translate the thought of making something into the sensation that the player feels. And this is something that indies are getting better and better at. The distance between their creativity and people enjoying their craft is becoming shorter and shorter, more and more compressed. You just got to do the work. As an indie, you've just got to do the work, and people connect to that. One of the things that I learned, because I wanted to be an indie, and I failed miserably, one of the things that I've learned is that the quickest way to do what you love is love what you do. If you've got that, you can make an indie game. So what about us? You want to hear some stories? Who wants to hear some stories? Spilling the beans. Yeah? Yeah? Okay. We'll talk about some in a minute. Let's talk about how we go about doing it, first of all. Not with all of the developers that we work with, but some of them. You're all too young to remember Frankie Goes to Hollywood, right? Good. Someone said, yeah. Okay, sadly, I'm not. I remember Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Trevor Horn saw a video of them There was no YouTube back then, so God knows how he saw a video of them. They were performing live, and they were rubbish. But there was this energy. There was something there. There was a seed of something beautiful. He saw that. And he used session musicians, he used sequencers, he used samplers to turn them into the phenomenon that was Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Now, making games for a console, I won't lie to you, is not easy. It's getting easier. You know, there are lots of people who didn't think they could make games for PlayStation Vita, who are now making games for PlayStation Vita. We're making it easier. But there's some work still to be done, right, Alan? There's still some work to be done. So in the meantime, what we do is we work with companies who are experienced technologists. Call them the session musicians of the video games industry, if you like. Really highly technically competent professionals, the likes of Abstraction. Who's heard of Abstraction Games? Abstraction Games did Hotline Miami. They did the PlayStation versions of Hotline Miami. They're doing a lot of other great work as well. And Blit. Blit are based in Barcelona. They worked on Spelunky for the Vita. And they made it best on Vita. This meant that the original creators didn't need to know how to program console platforms. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the originals of these games were somehow any less than the final version on the Vita. But these games were best on Vita. And it took professionals like Abstraction and Blit to make that happen. But the good news is it meant that the creators got what they wanted out of it as well. Now, hopefully you'll have heard of The Clash. A bit more enduring. Yeah? Of course, The Clash played their own music. And that's the case where their musicianship actually works. Even though they weren't the greatest musicians in the world, their musicianship worked, and their music endured for a very, very long time. And there's space for people like that in the industry as well. So the stories. Who knows what this is? There are no prizes. It's Super Exploding Zoo. You might have heard the news of this the other day. It's by our friends at Honey Slug. Anyone from Honey Slug here? No? They're awesome. I'm probably showing it on the show floor, so if you get a chance, go check it out. This is coming to PlayStation 4 and Vita. I'll tell you a very quick story about how this story came about. In March 2009, I was an overweight, bored, uninspired account manager going to see a company in Kentish Town. I was interested in whether they had anything to offer, and I was convinced they didn't. I thought they were just some Flash studio making, you know, frankly, rubbish Flash games. Couldn't have been more wrong. We were starting on the Minis project at the time. And Ricky had me through 6 game concepts back to back. They just couldn't stop. Once he'd shown me the first, you've got to have a look at this. I've got to have a look at this. And I had not seen passion like that since, well, I don't know, since I was very, very young indeed. It was just an incredible eye-opener. So that's how their involvement started. They got onto Minis. Their art budget for Cahoots was £30, which is amazing. And they've gone on to do great things. You know, they've done Frobisher Says. As many of you know, they're working on Hohokum as well, and now they're doing Super Exploding Zoo, which you're going to love. I won't go too deeply into the story here. I've already covered Abstraction. But we have a really flexible and very interesting relationship with Abstraction, Denathan, and Devolver, who all work together to make this happen. And of course, we're working together with them to make Hotline Miami 2 as well. James, what's this one? Velocity 2X. Now, James has told this story a few times, but I'll cut to the chase. I was overworked, had too much on, didn't always answer emails on time, and James sent me an account profile page for Future Lab, where instead of a picture of me there, had a picture of Ronald McDonald, which was risky, because I was pushed and stressed and not half as excited as I am these days. By the way, did any of you see me at Gamescom, doing the Gamescom thing? Someone said that I was, I can't remember the word they used, but basically I was almost delirious with excitement. But that was me massively toned down. And it's because of stuff like this that I get so excited. So at the time, I was nothing like this. You know, I was very by the numbers, very straight, Couldn't have done a talk like this to save my life. And I thought, you know what, you cheeky so-and-so. And then I thought, that takes guts. Why don't other people do that? Why don't they take that chance? It's a human being reaching out to a human being, right? And he's saying, you're a clown. And he's saying it to my face. I thought, chutzpah. Kudos to the guy. So we had a little exchange. I threatened to cancel all of their accounts, which I think they took seriously for a bit. And a fantastic relationship began. And it's culminating in this, Velocity 2X. How cool is that? Somebody over there took a chance to make fun out of someone in a corporation and developed a beautiful relationship. Takes guts. It's beautiful. Mike Bithel's Volume. Who's checked it out on the show floor? Good. What do you think? Yeah? There are some people saying they'll buy a PS4 just for this. Indie games don't sell consoles, do they? Anyone know Atomicom? We love these guys. The reason I want to tell you this story is because they were trying to get a game deal with us for a PlayStation Mobile title, which is called Switch Galaxy. Just for PlayStation Mobile. Check it out. It's one of the better PlayStation Mobile titles. Now, I agreed the terms to this deal on the top deck of a 98 bus. Business can be done that way. So I went to develop, and this was literally agreed in the last 15 minutes before I left for the airport. But basically, I got introduced by JW from Vlambeer and Jasper. I said, you've got to check out this game. They took me over, and Ricky was standing there by this shy, retiring, and very friendly guy, Bo. So you've got to check this out. So I started playing, and by some miracle, playing against 3 other players, I won. How insane is that? And of course, I had to work out a deal after that. And so that was done in 15 minutes. Agreed. Let's bring it to PlayStation. I think one of the things that people don't realize is just how accessible we've become. And that's a conception that was around for a very long time indeed. But hopefully it's beginning to dissipate. Starbound. Now, Lorenzo. Anyone heard of Lorenzo? Hands up, please. A few hands up? Yes, good. Lorenzo doesn't like to be talked about. Lorenzo works in my team. He's absolutely awesome. He'd been pushing me to see these guys forever. So, okay, let's see them. They came in, and of course, before the meeting, I had a look, and I said to Lorenzo, why didn't you talk about this before? I've been telling you about this for ages. So I went down embarrassed, and they said something along the lines of, yeah, well, you know, how do we go ahead? How do we proceed with you? I said, we'd love to see you on the platform. And they said, we'd love to be on the platform. Okay, let's do it. And that's that. So very minimal resistance between PlayStation and the development community. This was done mostly on Skype. These guys are amazing. Teddy's the funniest guy ever. But basically, a whole load of Skype conversations, literally up until the last minute before Gamescom, to talk about this coming first on console for PlayStation. But Teddy and I back and forth for hour after hour, night after night, until they were happy. And most of the time, we weren't even talking about deals. We were just talking about the game and other stuff. And of course, Wasteland Kings by my friends at Vlambeer. I'll tell you. I shouldn't. I really shouldn't. I know I'm going to get into trouble for this. If legal are watching, then tomorrow you'll know why I get fired, for real. So what happened here was, we have a great relationship with Vlambeer, as you know. And I'd been talking to Rami for some time about getting console exclusivity. And one night, I just asked him outright, I said, listen, can you be first on PlayStation 4 and Vita over Skype in an IM conversation? He said, sure. Okay. Can you send me an email to that effect? Okay. So I sent him an email, sent me an email back with the word, yes. And that was it. And that's how he got to announce. I'll get fired for this tomorrow, I don't care. It was an awesome moment. So I sent him an email back saying, Sony, left arrow 3, Vlambeer. Am I allowed to do stuff like that, 47? Am I allowed to use emoticons still? Don't know. Anyway, so I did. So he came back with Vlambeer loves Sony. So that's the kind of relationship we enjoy. I'm going to tell you a little story about Velocity 2X as well, from the other night. I was exhausted. I'd had no sleep. What's new? And it was 1 o'clock in the morning. I was in bed with my iPad. And I was just about to read some crushingly boring text from the Harvard Business Review. I kid you not. Yeah, I read stuff like that. And it was about disruptive change. I thought, but I've done this. So while I'm doing this and falling asleep, because it takes me about a paragraph reading stuff like that, you should try it sometime. Ever have any insomnia? Read the Harvard Business Review. So I read this for about a second, and then James comes on. And I'm thinking, I could ignore him because I should be asleep, or I could respond. So I took a chance. I responded. And he was very, very polite, and he sent me a link to the video. And it basically ended my day on a high. It was such a beautiful video of Velocity 2X, showed me the platforming, the stuff that I'd really, really believed in. And this is the thing that, for me, was delivering on the promise of taking the mechanics of the shooting section, taking them into the platform section, and made them real. And I saw this, and it was everything I dreamt it could be. And I thanked him profusely. And the thing is, he's happy as well because, you know, clients pleased and so on. Doesn't take much to please me, but I would not be that effusive in my praise if I didn't genuinely feel it. And that's what happens when you get to work on your dream and you don't get interfered with in any way. You're allowed to express yourself, you're allowed to be late, you're allowed to take your time, you're allowed to turn it into something really beautiful. So it's not just that you get great games coming to PlayStation from indies. Great relationships develop as well. And as far as I'm concerned, business means great relationships. Doesn't mean anything else. All the rest follows. I'm going to end on this. Do you know teller, Penn and Teller? Basically, sometimes magic is just spending more time on something than anyone else might reasonably expect. That's what goes into indie games. More time. And that's what creates the magic. Thank you very much.
That was absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much. We have time for a couple of questions from the audience. So if anybody does have a question, raise your hands. And if you could stand up when you're asking the question as well, it would be great. Thanks.
Hello. Microphone and standing up. Right. So as an indie developer, is there a mechanism for finding a way to find a PS4 without paying a undisclosed amount of money through DevNet? Do you guys have a loans program?
You're talking about some NDA stuff, and so it makes it very, very difficult for me to answer your question. But for the right developers, with the right concepts, yes, we do get loans.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions at all? There's one just there.
What are your thoughts on Resogun?
Resogun. Got to tell you about my Resogun story. So I was at Gamescom. I paid him 10 quid to ask that question. So at Gamescom, I gave some sessions to the media. I've got my head across there. And there was Resogun set up on one of the machines. And of course, I love Super Stardust. It was my favorite game of the PS3 generation. And I was watching Resogun. I was watching the guys play it. And it was during somebody's talk. And I was I've got to be careful what I say, but yeah, it was just pretty amazing. It was so amazing that while he was playing it, I got my wallet out, took out some euros, and threw them at the screen. I literally threw money at the screen. I don't know why I did that. You know, I'm too old to be doing stuff like that, but I threw euros at the screen. And then I spent... I think he didn't punch me. He didn't punch me. I think he took it so well. So nice of him. He started laughing and said, "You literally just... Yeah, I want to play it." And then we had a chat. We caught up about it. I told them how much I love Super Stardust. And I told them just why I got it and why 60 FPS was so important in something of that nature. And, oh, Super Stardust, one of my top 8 games of all time. So Resogun, I would basically buy a PS4 and am buying a PS4 just to play Resogun. Does that answer your question? And I recommend you all do as well.
Got time for one more question. Anybody questions? There's one in the front row just there.
Shahid, see when you threw your money there, you know you could end up being on NeoGAF and a GIF or shut up and take my money? I guess a more serious question is though, how do you find it when you wake up and find yourself all over social media or on forums being praised by people you don't even know?
You can't live your life worrying about what other people think of you. You've just got to use what you've learned and make the best possible decisions you can. And the other thing is, you have only one life, and you've got to live it the best way you can. And I believe in putting everything you can into everything you've got. So if that happens, it happens. I mean, if it benefits the company as well, that's the other thing. You've got to think about PlayStation's position in this as well. If it benefits the company, great. So far, it's benefiting the company. It seems to be good for relationships on balance. And if it doesn't, I'll have to stop what I'm doing or get fired or whatever and do it someplace else. But I don't think so. I think it's a mark more of PlayStation's openness, I think. If you look at Yoshida-san as well, he's amazing. He does all kinds of stuff. Nowhere near maybe as mental as me. But he's a really, really senior exec. But it's just a general sign of PlayStation's openness. You remember the video that Adam Boyes did with Yoshida-san in the wake of the PS4 announcer? Right? That sort of stuff didn't happen before. And that's a sign of the change of culture. We're putting people out front more, recognizing that much more about business is about how people connect to people, and not just about how corporations connect to corporations. Does that answer the question?
That answers it very well. Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. And I think we have all witnessed a moment that will be immortalised in NeoGAF history. So yeah, that's worthwhile. Anyway, thank you so much, Shahid, and thanks for coming. We have... oh, that's fine. That was awesome. Thank you very much.